On everybody, happy Friday. Welcome back to Let's Talk Movies. I'm Brad. Been really looking forward to this stream, man. It's been a long week. I'm so sorry I had to reschedule this. I originally wanted to do this show on Tuesday night. As I'm sure many people know, life gets in the way. Didn't end up happening. But it ended up working out because I've got a new audio setup. So let me know in the chat if you can see, hear me okay, all of that good stuff. And we're gonna have a good time. It's been a long week. I think anytime you have a 4-day work week, because we just had President's Day on top of what was a crazy weekend for at least for me. I don't know about anybody else, but me and my wife, it was a crazy weekend. But it's been a long week, and I'm super excited to hop on here and to just hang out and shoot it with you guys and just chill. It's gonna be a good night. So tonight on the show, a few different things going on. So we are going to talk Crystal Lake. There were a few updates with that series this week. That's kind of what sparked me wanting to do a live session talking about Crystal Lake. But we're going to talk about what you want to see from the series. I shared a little bit. I'll share more tonight. If you saw my Crystal Lake update video from earlier in the week, I also did a kind of a fun little video vlog type deal. It was pretty short, just about 6 minutes long, about the original Friday the 13th film, just kind of about the rewatchability of it and kind of the legacy of that film and my personal view and standpoint on that film after seeing it umpteen times, and this recent rewatch, which I did with Julia. But we're also going to talk about the series premiere of The Last of Us, which I gotta say, I don't know if you all are Last of Us people or if you know anything about the show, or excuse me, if you know anything about the story in the game. But The Last of Us is one of the greatest video game stories I have ever heard. It was absolutely amazing. And HBO Max picked it up to do I didn't put my background back, picked it up to do a TV series. So super excited to see where that goes this Sunday. Although I'm definitely not wishing the weekend away because Lord knows we all need it. We all need one. So, but it's going to be a fun show. I also have brand new beer to try because you all know it wouldn't be me if I didn't try a new beer live with you all right now on the show. So pretty excited. Hope you've had an awesome Friday, an awesome end to your work week, and an awesome work week. Starting to feel a little bit more like January here in Kentucky, at least. It's getting a little bit colder. I think we're in for possibly some winter weather this weekend, next week-ish. So it's starting to look the part, at least, because for a while Kentucky was legit. It looked like it was April. It was 70 and sunny. It was 70 and sunny, and it was kind of nuts. But so how are you guys doing? If you're in the chat right now, please let me know. Drop me a comment. Let me know how you're doing. Want to hear from everybody. Again, just to recap for anybody who just joined, we're going to talk The Last of Us. We're going to talk Crystal Lake. Let's do this really quickly, though, because I want to go ahead and start sipping on it. So this is a little traditional, obviously, but right now we have Sam Adams Cold Snap, which I haven't seen this one before. It's a white ale, but we're going to go ahead and give this one a shot and see how it is. The flavor profile description says, unfiltered and lively, this crisp white ale gets a kick from a bright blend of smooth spring spices. What's considered a spring spice? I think we need to answer that question first. Like, what would you consider to be a spring spice? I don't know. I don't know what I would consider. It says ale brewed with clementine infused orange peel and spices added. I like the orange thing. I've been feeling the orange thing lately. Like I like Blue Moon, but I had one. What was the one I had before? I don't buy a lot of beer. Like a 6-pack will last me a couple of weeks. Like I don't drink it all like really quickly, but I don't know what was the last one I had. I don't remember what it was, but it had kind of an orange thing going on too. So you got to get we got the Brewgrass cup, that Kentucky Brewgrass. So we got to get the color test. John Taffer would tell me that I'm pouring a beer wrong, by the way. He would. If you've seen that video, it's gone around. It kind of went viral. But everybody's saying about, like John Taffer had said, basically like all the foam at the top of the beer, like basically saying that the foam is supposed to be there because essentially people who try to pour a beer really slowly, all of the gases can't like dissipate enough, which is why there's no foam. But if you let the beer like foam up at the top, then the gases don't disperse in your stomach. They disperse, in the air when like the bubbles, whatever. I don't know beer terms, even though I do like beer. I sound like the biggest craft beer drinker ever, which I am. But so let's try this thing. This is Cold Snap Sam Adams, which we're about to go into a cold snap right now. So, cheers. I like that. Definitely orangey. I don't get the... I don't get the spice thing, though. I don't get that. I guess you could say it's like... No, it's not really it's not clove or cinnamon or anything like that. I don't know. What's a spring spice? I gotta look this up because I'm really confused. I don't know what spring spices. What the hell is a spring spice? Dill? It ain't dill. I can tell you that right now. It ain't dill. Fenugreek? What is fenugreek? I don't know what that is. Marjoram. Saffron. Okay. Spring herbs. Cardamom, coriander, cumin. Could be cumin. I don't know. Whorehound. That sounds awesome. Whorehound. There's whorehound in my beer. I don't want to think about that. That sounds terrible. But I like it. I like it. Like I said, I've been digging the orange thing. I don't know. I've been feeling it lately. I gotta go in for one more sip. It's good. It's refreshing. It's not quite light beer, but it's... I don't know. It's good. It's a white ale, so I mean, it's not dark anyways. I've kind of been feeling that lately. I bought a 6-pack of something that was a little bit darker. It wasn't like porter dark, but it was on the scale between 1 and 10, 1 being like Miller Lite and 10 being like the darkest coffee porter you've ever had. It was probably like a 7-ish type thing, but I like it. It's good. It's pretty good. So, let me go ahead and check. I had one in here. My dad's here. What's up, Dad? Just talked to him a little bit ago. He says, "What up, bud? What up, Dad?" So let's do this. Let's go ahead and get rolling on the chat here. Let's talk The Last of Us first. I'm pretty excited to talk about that. This is a show. So I've said from the very beginning that I think The Last of Us is going to be maybe my favorite project of the year. Movie, TV, whatever. I think it's the story itself has so much potential. Not even like forget production quality, forget acting, all of that stuff. The story that Neil Druckmann crafted at Naughty Dog when The Last of Us came out in 2013 was it was sensational. And at the heart of it, it's very much about being a father. It's very much about I mean, look at the tagline of the show and the whole thing with the fireflies. When you're lost in the darkness, look for the light. I mean, this incredibly gruesome, dark, post-apocalyptic world where there are terrible things going on at every turn. You essentially have Joel, who is this broken person, and then suddenly his entire world is flipped upside down. You know, there's a companion podcast. Essentially a companion podcast for the show that HBO did. I forget the host's name. It's the guy who played Joel in the video game, I believe. But the very first episode I don't know if everyone will have Neil and Craig on it, but Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin, who are the showrunners, of course, Neil Druckmann being the dude behind The Last of Us, like the main dude. And then also Craig Mazin, who did the Chernobyl series for HBO, which I haven't seen myself, but I've heard very, very good things about. Neil speaks very highly of it. I say Neil like I know the guy, like we're tight. I've never met Neil. I've actually thought it would be a really, really cool interview to try to get him on Let's Talk Movies. I think that would be a really cool like show. Really cool thing to do. So Neil, if you're listening, dude, I would love to have you on the show and talk The Last of Us. But they had said something really interesting, and that was that again, there were a few things that struck me about how it's always interesting to hear someone who crafted a story describe it. But hearing Neil talk about the idea of it being about fatherhood and the themes about Joel being this broken human being, and the fact that in an instant he meets someone that he's going to have such a close bond with, and someone that is essentially literally going to change his entire life for the better, even though they go on this crazy, dangerous, awful journey together. Joel is very much, when we find him after the outbreak 20 years later, living in the Fedra compound in the quarantine zone, Joel is very much a broken man. He's hardened, especially in the show. They really, really took the hardness of Joel and they leaned into that. And Pedro Pascal did a really, really good job at it. But I think Joel Neil said it best, honestly. He had said, at the end of the day, Joel can be as hardened as he wants, and Joel can be the muscle for Tess, and he can do all those things. He can do terrible things, but at the end of the day, Joel is a father, and Joel is always going to be a father. And Ellie, that was his outlet. Ellie was his way of being a father when he could no longer be one because of, spoiler alert, the tragic loss of Sarah. Which was his actual daughter at the beginning of the outbreak. So many good things with the character development so far. We'll get into another thing in just a little bit once we kind of break the episode down. But Flett, what's going on, buddy? Kyle Curtis Flett is in the chat. He said, "Hey, Brad, and definitely loved the first episode. Dude, it was one of the best series pilots I've ever seen. I don't know what it is about zombie shows having ridiculously good pilot episodes, but like Days Gone By, which is... You all know I'll always come back to The Walking Dead. I'll find a way to bring up The Walking Dead because I love that show so much. Despite all the hate, I know it gets hate, and you can kiss my whole ass. I love The Walking Dead. I always will. It'll always be my number one. But Days Gone By is an incredible pilot. Absolutely love the way that episode progresses. And while it wasn't quite as long as this episode, which I believe... What was this episode called? What was this one called? It's The Last of Us, Episode 1. What was it called? Is it just called Episode 1? Maybe it is just called Episode 1. Yeah, it's just called Episode 1. Yeah, so there's not really names for it, which that's fine. But I'll tell you what, I love the way it opened. As we kind of dive into this here, the opening, one of the cool things that I really liked about what they did was that it did diverge from the game. And let me back up here. I watched this with Julia, and I've tried to get her to watch The Walking Dead with me before, and she was like, I'm good, I don't really want to. She wasn't about it. She didn't want to watch The Walking Dead, and I understand that. That's fine. Listen, The Walking Dead is a very big book to open. You know what I mean? If you're not like really into it and you don't really understand the story, The Walking Dead can be a lot, and I fully understand that. But she wasn't really interested in The Walking Dead. She watched the first few episodes, didn't get into it right off the bat, which is fine. But I said, okay, if you're not going to watch The Walking Dead with me, you're going to watch The Last of Us when it premieres, because I really think you're going to enjoy it. And surely enough, she absolutely loved it. She thought The Last of Us was amazing. Which I did too. I mean, I actually saw quite a few people, like she was talking about people at work that were like, I watched it and it was like maybe one of the best TV pilots I've ever seen. And I was like, see, I told you, it was really good. But it diverged in certain places from the gameplay, but it makes sense because it expanded on things so much more than the game was able to. You know what I mean? The game had that's the thing, is when you're playing a video game, Neil mentioned this as well. You have to keep up a certain pace with the action and gameplay and things that are going on. You have to keep finding small ways to progress the story forward. Whereas with a series like this, you can kind of pause and take the time to be like, okay, let's let's take a minute and really stretch this out. Let's milk this for what it's worth here. And they really did that, especially with the flashback stuff. We spend a lot of the very first episode in flashbacks to 2003, which is when the cordyceps outbreak first happens. Now, the opening of the show, this cold open type deal on the talk show in the 60s, I think it was like 1960 something. I don't know, 1962 or 3 or whatever. I loved it. I thought it was a really, really, really cool way to introduce you to this world. And again, I'm bringing up that podcast again because it's a great listen if you're into The Last of Us and if you're into watching the episodes and things like that. It's a really, really cool insight into the production stuff and into how they kind of took things from the game and expanded on them or had to cut them, or like it's pretty cool. But they took moments and expanded on it in ways that the game couldn't. And again, because the game has to continually progress, you would get bored with it if it was just nonstop story. I mean, it can't be cutscenes all the time. But for example, the epidemiologists on the talk show in the 60s thought it was a brilliant way to open it for a few different reasons. Number one, it sets up cordyceps as a threat. It's an immediate threat that you can identify with, and especially coming off of what we all just went through for the last 3 years with the pandemic and with COVID and with everything that transpired over the last few years. I think people have, I don't know if I would say a new appreciation, because even the guy says, mankind has battled with viral outbreaks for centuries and we've always won, and the epidemiologist is asking him, okay, so bacteria, and he's like, no. And he's like, okay, it's not viruses, not bacteria. He even makes the joke. He's like, you really like to say no a lot. Like, you know what I mean? And then when he finally says fungi and whatever, and the crowd is kind of silent and they're like, they're like, oh, and they're listening. It's that moment of like, oh shoot, like this, okay, that's interesting. Like, go on. Like, and he's explaining that, right now, well, he explains what cordyceps is, and he explains how it infects insects and kind of what happens, and it takes over, not only does it take over your body, but it takes over your central nervous system, it takes over your brain, it thinks for you, it changes your personality, it changes your attitude, it changes your brain, it re-hotwires your brain to do one thing, basically, which is create more spores, create more of whatever it's infecting. You know what I mean? It's like a parasite. I know it's a fungus, but you get what I'm trying to say. It needs a host. It needs something to grab onto. It even says, hi baby. It even says like, he says at one point, right now fungi don't need us. They can't evolve anymore. There's no reason for them to evolve right now. But think about what could happen over the next 40 or 50 years. Think about, okay, what about climate change? The Earth's rising temperature. Right now they don't need to evolve, but our body temperature is warmer than an ant's or than an insect. So if cordyceps does end up evolving to infect humans, that's a big problem. You know what I mean? And I love the way he says it when I believe the interviewer actually asks him what happens when it evolves, and when it's like, okay, it can infect us, and his only response is, we lose. And I was like, damn, like that's a way to open a show. Because really there's two things. I mean, he mentions the climate change thing with like the warming temperatures and things like that, which is already a trigger for people as like being bad. And then you also throw the like pandemic-esque thing on top of it with the fungus, and it's like, holy crap, man, like this is serious. Like this really got dark really, really quickly. So I thought it was a really, really interesting way to open the show, because yes, it diverges from the game, but it also sets up the threat in a way where you can just focus on the threat at hand, which at the beginning of the episode is the fungus. and that's really, really cool. It was cool to see that. The opening with the incredible Last of Us theme and the way that the cordyceps spreading and things like that. The opening is incredible, and like Julia had even said when we were sitting there watching it, she was like, HBO always has really good openings. Like Game of Thrones had a great opening. She's a Game of Thrones person. I'm not. You all know that. What was it called? What was the Game of Thrones spinoff called? Help me out here. Something about House of the Dragon. Yeah, House of the Dragon. That's what it was. Like the two of them had really good openings. Loved the opening for the show as well. The opening credits. But when we finally open on 2003, and we jump a few decades in the future, which again, even that kind of gives you a sense of, okay, like for example, it sets up there's something scary, and that's what's so scary about the zombie apocalypse thing in general. Like, you all know I'm a huge zombie fan, and there is something inherently scary about the idea that at the drop of a hat, I mean, look how fast COVID happened. Look how fast things shut down. Look how fast things collapsed. It's this idea that in the blink of an eye, something can just completely throw a wrench in the tracks of society, especially when it's something that's biological, like a virus or like a fungus or things like that. I love the fact that they took the time to show that in the 60s, and then we make the jump to 2003, and then of course you get to see how this is going to affect real people with Sarah and with Joel. We took the time to set them up as people. Joel is a dad who is trying his best. I don't believe we ever mentioned Sarah's mom, Joel's wife. We might mention her later on. I don't know. Obviously she's not there. She's either passed away. She's not in the picture. I forget exactly what happens there. But yeah, we take the time to set them up as a father and as a daughter, and to get to know them a little bit as people before we jump right into the action and to the chaos, which makes it all the more harrowing for them. As an audience member, it makes it all like you're so much more invested, because you're like, oh, like I don't want this to happen to them. You know what I mean? Because you've seen their relationship, you've seen their dynamic, you've seen how they live with each other, and that's really, really cool. I enjoyed seeing them make breakfast together, Joel oversleeping, Tommy coming over, and them kind of having that interaction with Tommy. You get the idea that Tommy comes over all the time. Like, Tommy picks him up for work. Tom, you know what I mean? Tommy's his dude. He's his brother. You know what I mean? And it seems like they have a really good, healthy relationship with each other, even when they're joking about the neighbor wants Sarah to come over, and Joel's like, oh yeah, she'll be over later, she'll stay however long you want, and they're joking or whatever. But I enjoyed that stuff. I like that stuff. It's like the calm before the storm type deal. And you're getting little instances, like even before the thing with the old woman, when Sarah's in school and the guy keeps like scratching and like twitching, and like there's things going on, like you're hearing about things going on the news. And when she's in the watch shop, that was the point where I was like, okay, the hair on my neck is starting to raise up a little bit, and I'm like, okay, here we go. This is getting to be like that creepy, something is imminent and frightening feeling that I love about zombie apocalypse stuff. I love that feeling. That sounds really weird, because like I would never ever. There are some people that, and it's really weird, there are people that want the zombie apocalypse and stuff like that to happen, and I'm like, bro, no. Like, I'm good. But from an entertainment perspective, I love it. It's like, I absolutely love it, man. But yeah, it started to have that looming feeling of like, okay, it's obvious something is wrong. Sarah is aware that something is wrong here, and she can't quite figure out what it is when she's in the watch shop, and the ambulances and the fire trucks and the police cars and all that stuff are going by, and the the guy's wife comes in and she's like, we're closing or whatever, and she shuts the thing and he's like, I'm almost done, and she's like, we are done, take your stuff and go, and he shoves her out or whatever. And but that was really, really cool. I love that stuff. That's setting the stage for what's to come. It's the stuff that makes the hair on my body stand up, because it's like, ooh, that's eerie. It's very eerie. It's very imminent that something is wrong. Something is coming. And that's what I'm telling you. A good zombie apocalypse drama, whether it's a video game or whether it's a movie or a TV show or whatever, begins with a good outbreak. You have to portray the outbreak perfectly in order for it to be effective. And I think this did a really good job. It's one of the reasons I always really liked watching zombie apocalypse fan films, and seeing really cool, like, creative, creepy ways that people can try and pull that off, and get that creepy atmospheric feeling without the big budget stuff. It can be cool. It's definitely there's a reason that the zombie subgenre is one of my favorite parts of horror, just because it's so cool to see that come to life. And it genuinely freaks me out. I mean, I've talked about this before. 28 Days Later is one of the movies that genuinely scares me. Like, it's one of the only horror films that I can honestly say I feel creepy after I've watched 28 Days Later. It genuinely freaks me out, and I love it for that. David Irwin, what's going on, buddy? Hey, Brad, can just pop in for a few minutes. Hey, Flet Peter. Buddy, I'm glad you got to stop in. Where are you? If you're overseas, if I'm not mistaken. I think you said that on the last show. I believe you said that on the last show. And the man, the myth, the legend himself, J-Dead himself, is in the chat. What's going on, man? Glad you're here. Glad we're all getting to hang out tonight. I've been, like I said before, I've been really looking forward to this a lot. I wanted to do it on Tuesday, didn't get a chance to. I had to reschedule it for tonight, but get to trying out the new sound system here. I hope you all can hear me okay. But it's been a good time. Lots of movie news this week. Between The Last of Us, between the Crystal Lake stuff, which I hope you guys got to see. I posted that earlier. So yeah, I don't know. It's been a good week. David said, I'm in Dublin, Ireland, Brad. It's 1:40 a.m. here. Dude, why are you watching this crappy channel? Go to sleep. I'm just kidding, David. I'm glad you're here, buddy. But hopefully you can get some sleep, man. That's early. Dude, at 1:40 a.m., I am gone. I am in a different universe of sleep. I am out, especially tonight, because I don't have to get up for work in the morning. Like, I'm going to be gone, and I'm really looking forward to it, actually. But so back to the show. By the way, let me know if you guys watched The Last of Us. If you saw the series premiere, I know Flat was here a little bit ago. I don't know if he's still here, but Kyle definitely watched it. My dad was here earlier. He still hasn't seen it, and he said I don't know, Dad. If you're still here, let me know. Do you have HBO Max? Can you watch it? Because if not, you need to get on that. You need to watch this show because you would love it. We're both zombie guys. Me and him are definitely Resident Evil zombie dudes. We've always been zombie fans. I've told you all this before. I was a zombie fan before I was a slasher fan, or even really a horror fan. Resident Evil is the thing that I credit that got me into horror. And then it spiraled from there, and here we are. Here we are right now. I have more horror stuff. I literally, if you guys remember the old movie room, and of course I've moved since then, and I have my new setup in here, but I literally don't have enough space to put it all up. So I love this horror fandom thing that we have going here. I mean, it's this year especially, I've really been feeling the horror community thing. Really, really been feeling it, and I'm into it wholeheartedly. Love it. Colton Chandler, what's going on, buddy? He said, "Sup, Brad? Happy Friday. Did you see the news today that Sean Cunningham is in early development of a Friday the 13th reboot or possibly sequel to the original?" I feel like that Trump meme. I'm hearing about it for the first time. I haven't. No, I have not heard that, dude. Holy crap. I have not heard that. No. Holy crap! Sean Cunningham developing Friday the 13th reboot, House reboot, Nitro. Bro, what the hell? How did I miss this? Where have I been for the last 5 hours? Not only working. So it says Bloody Disgusting has uncovered a big time scoop to finish off the week, learning that Sean S. Cunningham, Friday the 13th, is not only working to get his own Friday the 13th reboot off the ground, but he's also developing a reboot of a horror movie he produced back in 1985, House. Holy crap, man. So this is, I guess, going to be... I guess this is going to be in addition to... So this is going to be in addition to what they did with Crystal Lake. That's interesting to me because you would think... See, I'm so confused about what Sean and Victor agreed on. Because, like, I know it was settled, and technically, I guess it's fine now, because they wouldn't be able to use Jason and Pamela in Crystal Lake if they wouldn't have settled in some way, not even financially, just in agreement on something. There's no way that they would have been able to use both Jason and Pamela in Crystal Lake, which now we know that they're both going to be a part of the series, that they're going to pay both of them their due. So, like, that's really interesting. I wonder what he'll do. Like, it kind of makes me wonder, like, I don't know. Like, what do you do? Because is Victor going to let Sean use Hockey Mask Jason? Are we going to get Hockey Mask Jason? Are we going to get a different version of Jason? Like, a completely different, like, look and feel to it? I don't know. That's interesting. Yeah, man, hopefully not just noise. That's very, very interesting, Colton. I had not heard that yet. That's really cool. It says it only broke 4 hours ago, so I mean, I guess it hasn't been out that long, but that's pretty nuts. Wow. Huh. That, I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic with Crystal Lake, but that kind of makes me... I'm excited, but I'm also kind of concerned because that can get really weird really quickly when you have two different versions of the same character going on. Like if we would have had like one studio making a Michael Myers film in the middle of the Halloween Kills, Halloween Ends trilogy, like that would have been that would be very strange for audiences. So I don't know if, I don't know. That's interesting. I'm glad you told me that. I'm going to have to look into that a little bit more and try and piece that out. Might do a video on that. Who knows? Maybe after this. Probably not. I'll probably do it tomorrow. I'll probably look into it a little bit more and then we'll chat. That's interesting. Especially so we'll talk more about that when we're going to keep talking The Last of Us because that's what I was kind of in the middle of talking about. I took a little break, but we're going to talk a little bit more about Crystal Lake. So stay tuned because later on in the show we're going to get to that. But so back to The Last of Us. We kind of covered the cold open with the epidemiologist at the beginning of the show. We covered the stuff with Sarah and kind of the introduction to her and Joel. One of the diverges that happened, I don't remember this happening in the game. Correct me if you're a Last of Us fan and you know. I don't remember Tommy getting arrested. If that's just me and I'm completely blanking on something, let me know. But when that happened, I was like, I don't think Tommy was arrested. Because, like, if you think when she obviously has Joel's watch fixed and she hands it to him on the couch. And, you know, when he comes home late and they're sitting there watching the movie, Sarah falls asleep. And when Joel gets the call from Tommy and Tommy's like, hey, I'm in lockup. Some dude at the bar was freaking out, whatever. And Joel's like, you know, damn it, Tommy. And he goes to bail him out, which is, of course, he takes Sarah up to bed. And then that's when the fun begins because things start to go downhill really quickly in terms of like the collapse with the cordyceps outbreak and things like that. But I don't remember Tommy being arrested. That was like even when I was watching it, I was like, I don't think that happened. So correct me if I'm wrong. I might have to. I'll honestly, I need to go back and play the game again. It's been a couple of years since I actually like sat. It's been since COVID. I remember I played through it again during COVID because I played through it once when it came out. I think I've done it. I think I've partially probably 3 times, fully like top to bottom. I've played through The Last of Us twice. I played it once when it first came out, and then I played it again during COVID. I started part 2. I didn't finish part 2, even though I know what happens. I watched it, but I didn't actually finish part 2, which I know is it's a very Miguel thing to do. Miguel would be proud of me because that's what listen, when a new video game comes out, that's what Miguel does. He sits on YouTube and he watches 2 hours worth of cutscenes. He was like, I like watching it like a movie. I was like, I like playing the game, but so be it. It's okay. So he would be proud of me if he knew how I learned the story of The Last of Us Part 2. But anyways, the fun begins when Sarah hears the helicopters overhead, and then there's an explosion, and of course that startles her awake, and she's like, what the hell? What is going on? And when she starts to kind of realize things are getting weird, she's seeing the green flashes, and she's noticing that there's the helicopters, and things don't sound like something's very wrong. There's something about the beginning of a zombie apocalypse, and I know people are going to come at me for the same thing that they come at me for 28 Days Later for, and because they're zombies, okay? Like, let's just agree with that now. I know, like, there's so many people that try to be like, not woke isn't the right word, but they try to be all like the elevated horror term. People are like, they're infected, they're not zombies. I'm like, okay, they're zombies. Come on, they're zombies. Let's be honest with ourselves. You can say whatever you want, but to me, they're zombies, you know? And I know, like, even George Romero was very specific about what a zombie was. And I was like, dude, a zombie's a zombie. A zombie can walk, a zombie can run, a zombie can crawl. Like, if it is a former version of someone else that has been infected by a virus or a fungus or some kind of biological thing, it's a zombie. That, to me at least. I know some people would disagree with me, but that's my take on a zombie. I mean, I would say the stuff from the Romero films, in The Last of Us, Resident Evil, although I know Resident Evil is a whole other can of worms when it comes to stuff, but like the stuff in Resident Evil, The Walking Dead, I said like 28 Days Later, they're all zombies. It all falls under the zombie umbrella for me. But when Sarah starts kind of walking around the house, of course, that kind of happens similarly in the game when she's walking around and she's realizing things are wrong. Of course, she sees the EAS broadcast when it's like, stay in your home, do not leave. And of course, the very first thing you do when you're in a survival horror situation is you do what the EAS system is not telling you to do. She walks out of the house. Julia was even like, dude, they literally just said on the news not to go outside, and the very first thing she did was go outside. I was like, okay, it's story. That's how horror stories are made. People make stupid decisions. But of course, we get the whole thing, which we had teased earlier when Sarah's looking at the books and the old lady is like, she's like twitching in the chair and whatever, and the dog is growling at her and barking and things like that, and the dog obviously has that like sixth sense that something is wrong with this woman. It's like, please let me out of the house. But the dog comes and finds her, and she's trying to take him home, and the dog bolts. The dog is like, bro, I am out. Goodbye. And it bolts away. And, of course, Sarah's kind of walking around, and the first real, like, the first real jaw-drop moment is, of course, when you see the old man, and he is just like, there's blood everywhere. She walks in the kitchen and her foot slips and she looks over and the old man is slumped up against the door between like the refrigerator and the door, like the back door out of the kitchen. And there's blood everywhere and he's all torn apart and whatever. And I think he tells her to run or something like that. And she looks over and she sees that old woman. That's part of what makes it 10 times scarier, is that it was this old woman who was wheelchair bound and she couldn't even move. And then suddenly she killed this dude, or practically killed this dude. And she's sitting there like, it looks like she's eating, or like, of course she's infecting. The fungus is going down inside of, inside of the other person. But she, like, this old woman who couldn't move is suddenly on top of somebody and she's killing people. And of course Sarah's frozen and she's freaking out. And when he says to run and she hops up and starts chasing Sarah, it's like, oh boy, okay, here we go. It's on now. Like, it's time. It's on. But that was a really, really cool scene. And of course, Joel and Tommy both pull up. She trips and she goes to run again. Joel and Tommy pull up and Joel takes her out, which again is crazy because it's like, you got to put yourself in this poor little girl's shoes. This sweet old lady that she used to go over to her house and bake with and take care of and read to and do whatever else, you know what I mean? Whatever she did with those people. This sweet old lady, A, just killed her family members, and B, straight up just chased her out of a house when she was wheelchair bound, and her dad just hit her in the face, Will Smith style, with a wrench. I mean, like, whoa. That, like, you put yourself in a 14-year-old girl's shoes. That's a lot. That would be a lot to process within a 10-minute period. So yeah, it's, you can tell. I mean, it's like she's shocked with what Joel just did. She's shocked with what she just saw with this poor old lady. I mean, there's a million different things that are probably going through that poor girl's head in that moment. And of course, Tommy's like, Joel, we got to go. They don't even go back in the house to grab stuff. They literally just get in the car and bolt, which makes sense. And of course, you get the whole... one of the things I could do an entire episode, and I should do an entire episode on zombie outbreaks and on like the beginning of the zombie apocalypse in film. But like one of the things that makes it so intriguing is, you know, yes, anytime you have a story like this, you're following a main set of characters. But what's so crazy is the fact that while you're following this main set of characters, I mean, you have an entire world falling apart around you. So there's things going on around you, and it's how you set that up that makes it so interesting and so freaky and intriguing and eerie. But like the neighbors, when Tommy hits them with the truck, and the neighbor's like, "What the hell, Joel?" And they go to help them, and of course, they're infected, and she dies as they're driving away. You get a lot of the same POV type shots from the truck like we got in the game. I believe in the game they were in a Jeep, if I'm not mistaken. Could be wrong. But they're in the truck. Sarah's in the back seat. Joel and Tommy are in the front seat. Tommy's driving. You're getting the point of view from the truck, like the camera's in the back seat facing the windshield and then facing the out the passenger side windows and things like that. But you're seeing the world fall apart. You're seeing the interstate packed. You're seeing explosions and helicopters and people running and houses on fire and all of these things that's just like building tension and noise and chaos. This like increasing scene of chaos, and it's really, really well done. It's all of the things that I want from a zombie apocalypse beginning, from that type of scene in a film or in a TV show. It's really, really well done how they build that world and how it gives you that eerie, holy crap, this is really happening, just chaotic feel. But of course, the biggest moment of the flashback is when I feel like Laurie Strode, the bus crashed, is when the car crashes and you see the airplanes falling out of the sky and things like that because there were infected people on the airplanes, and it's nuts. But you know, you're seeing all of this happen for the first time, and when the car crashes, it's like it's just chaos, boom, and the car crashes and it's silent, and you're focusing it's still. You're focusing on these little things, on Sarah trying to pick up the pieces and get out of the car, and then of course you're thrown right back into it when Joel has to pick her up because her ankle's broken, and they're tracked between Tommy, the cop car pushes into them. It's those things that are really cool ways of building tension. The scene when Sarah actually, again, spoiler alert, the scene when Sarah dies, when the soldier gets his orders and Joel's like, wait, like, you know, he's trying to plead with him and things like that. Pedro Pascal acted the hell out of that scene. It was really, really well done. And the girl that played Sarah too. What was her name? I the cast. Nico Parker, she killed it. She did an awesome job as Sarah. I really liked her performance. But Pedro Pascal did a really, really good job showing that emotion. I mean, I think I said this from the beginning. I think he's a really talented actor, and I think I had said from the very beginning, I think he's going to do a good job of balancing the emotional side of Joel with the really, really hardened, bulky man side of Joel. You know what I mean? Just with the hardened muscle power type thing. I don't know. I don't know if that's the grittiness. There's a certain grittiness to Joel after Sarah's death, like in the 20-year time jump that we don't see before. I mean, Joel obviously, you know, he has seen stuff. I mean, you kind of get that sense in the way he is, that he's been through some things that have not been great in his life. But after Sarah dies, I mean, he shows that emotion and then it cuts. And it's interesting because if you listen to that podcast with Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, they even said they almost ended it after the 20-year time jump when they show the little kid walk up and see the Boston quarantine zone, and they, you know, the Fedra agent lies to the kid, they give him the shot, they kill him, and then Joel throws him in the fire. They almost ended the episode there, and then the HBO execs were like, just food for thought. People might not come back if it's just like, kid dies, 20-year time jump, another kid dies, end episode. That would have been like, that's a whole lot of kid death for an hour-long episode. You know what I mean? And I'm glad they made the decision to introduce us to the world, to not the world necessarily, but to life in the Boston quarantine zone after the apocalypse happens. After, you know, we get to see a hardened Joel. We get to see Tess. We get introduced to her finally, which I also really like Tess's performance in this too. What's her name? I like to give these people their credit. Anna Torv, who played Tess, she did a really, really great job. Her and Joel obviously have a romantic thing going on with the way she crawls in bed with him when he's kind of sitting there dreaming. The way we're introduced to Ellie, it was really well done. And again, different than the game. It took some different twists and different directions than the game, but I did really enjoy what it did. I mean, I enjoyed the way that they expanded on things. I enjoyed the way that they took time to do some things differently than what the game did. I really appreciated that. When Joel cracks at the end of the episode and he beats the Fedra soldier that he was working with, keep you in mind, to death, that was really, really cool to see as well. It was really, really cool to see to see him go into dad mode, because like I said at the very beginning of this episode when we started talking about this, at the end of the day, Joel can be a warrior. Joel can be a fighter. Joel can be a gritty, broken, you know, half-whole man. But at the end of the day, Joel thrives when he gets to be a father, because Joel, at the heart of that character, is a father. And of course, like they said in the podcast, Neil, it was one of the things that stuck with me. Neil said, of course, Joel has no idea, but he's about to embark on this journey with his best friend. And Ellie is embarking on this journey with her best friend, and they have no idea. I mean, I love the introduction between them when he's pointing the gun at her, and every time she moves, he's like, nope, and he points the gun back at her, and Marlene's like, Joel pointed at me, or whatever. Like, it was just a cool interaction. So, it was an absolutely phenomenal way to kick off the show. It was an absolutely phenomenal series premiere. And it left me not only wanting to see episode 2, but it left me wanting to rewatch episode 1. I mean, it felt like a movie. It literally did. It was movie quality. And it left you wanting more, and it left you wanting more from these characters. It left you with this sense of like, okay, there is a much greater world out here, much like what happened with The Walking Dead. There's a parallel there that, again, they're very different pilot episodes. But there's a lot of the same themes just because of the thematic material and stuff like that that's being used. So It was awesome, man. I really, really, really enjoyed it. It was fantastic, and I'm really, really looking forward to watching episode 2. So that's my those are my thoughts on the series premiere of The Last of Us. Definitely looking forward to watching the second episode when it drops this Sunday, and yeah, it's gonna be great. Really, really looking forward to it. And as we're about halfway through the show, this beer is starting to get flat. So I probably need to finish this pretty soon. It's good. It still tastes good. Still got the orange thing going on. It's orange, but it's got something darker to it too that I can't quite figure out. But I still like it. I don't know. We'll see. We shall see if I can come up with it. If you all have any ideas, let me know. What would be a darker spring spice that would go with orange? I don't think it's clove, because clove would be like Christmassy. You know what I mean? So let's talk some Friday the 13th, dudes. Friday the 13th has been on everybody's minds a lot this week. Obviously, with the updates on the Crystal Lake series, now there's an update with the Sean Cunningham thing, with him wanting to develop a Friday the 13th reboot, which there's not, from what I can tell. Thanks, Colton, for letting me know that, by the way. From what I can tell, there's not a ton going on. Let's go ahead and read that real quick. I have it pulled up. Let me, hang on. Where did it go? Shit. Where did it go? Hang on. I'm trying to share my screen here. There we go. That's the right button. Yep. There it be. That's not what I want. That's what I want. Let's do this. Okay. Sean S. Cunningham developing Friday the 13th reboot, House reboot, and The Night Driver. Bloody Disgusting has uncovered a big-time scoop to finish off the week, learning that Sean S. Cunningham is not only working to get his own Friday the 13th reboot off the ground, but he's also developing a reboot of a horror movie he produced back in 1985, House. Never heard of House. In addition, Cunningham is producing an original film titled The Night Driver, working alongside Jeff Locker and director Jeremy Weiss on the upcoming projects. Of course, the catch with all things Friday the 13th is that the franchise was up until recently mirrored in legal issues, with original screenwriter Victor Miller now joining forces with Brian Fuller from Hannibal and A24 on a franchise prequel series for Peacock. The project is titled Crystal Lake, and Jeff Locker explains how a separate project could end up working. Locker explains, Sean hired me to do a rewrite on The Night Driver, and after working closely with director Jeremy Weiss and him on that, we naturally got to talking about Friday the 13th and House. Jeremy and I pitched our dream reboot of Friday the 13th with Sean's blessing to keep developing it with him. Locker continues, obviously the prequel TV series has reignited interest about a new film, so we're hoping the surrounding excitement will inspire both sides to come together and give us Jason on the big screen again for the first time in 14 years. But we also have a plan B for a sequel to the original we think fans will all absolutely love and should avoid any legal entanglements. That right there is where I get a little... that scares me a little bit. I'm like, what does that mean? Because if you're avoiding legal entanglements, that means no hockey mask typical Jason. So it's like, bro, you know what I mean? I don't know. That scares me a little bit, but I'm not counting chickens or anything. As for the House reboot, check out some early artwork below. Locker explains that the plan is to reimagine the 1985 movie. There's also an accompanying video game concept. The House reboot is both an update and reimagining on the classic series, centering around the birth of a haunted house, Locker explains. Lots of great scares and Howl at the Moon laughs. Plus, we're bringing a few of your favorite monsters from the original for some really fun but equally terrifying kills. I'm working on the script as we speak, and all I can say is that I'm having a fucking blast, he explains. So that's all about The Night Driver and... Let's see. Here's a little bit. Weiss continues, this movie has a true labor of love and has taken about a dozen years to get to this point where things are starting to move very quickly. One of the things that originally attracted me to the project is that it's a horror film that has similar sensibilities to some of the best genre films I grew up watching and loving, including Friday the 13th. To have Sean Cunningham return to the producer's chair for this project feels like a dream come true. I had his film's posters on my wall, so to be here so many years later with him producing is a pretty surreal experience. Weiss also touched on I'm skipping a few of these just because they're not necessarily important to the Halloween or the Friday the 13th projects. Weiss also touched on the Friday the 13th and House projects. Working on The Night Driver with Sean and Jeff was such a great experience, and by the time the momentum was picking up, we were looking at what projects could be next in line. As a horror nerd through and through, Friday the 13th and House were naturally where I wanted to head next. Jeff not only felt the same, but had very similar ideas with where to take both franchises. That's interesting. Now, I'm going to be honest here. Yes, I'm excited. Yes, I'm down for another Friday the 13th movie. But I don't know. If Victor is not on board, I don't know that I want it entirely. I don't want to, again, that's a fine line because it's like, could they do something interesting without Jason without Jason as we know him? Yes. Could they do something similar to what happened in Friday the 13th Part 2 and 3 and 4? Yes. But how do you do a direct sequel to Friday the 13th? Pamela died. I mean, Pamela, if you do a direct sequel, Pamela's off the table. Now, the Crystal Lake series is different because with the Crystal Lake series, that's a retelling essentially. As far as I am aware of it, you can tell Pamela's story and you can tell Jason's story in one long cohesive thing, and that's fine. But if you do a sequel to the original film, especially if Victor Miller is not on board, what story is there to tell? It's not like Pamela could be killing a new group of counselors because Pamela is dead. Like, Pamela's gone, out, done, capiche, beheaded, literally. I don't know. The fact that it flat out says they have a plan in case, a plan B in case, there's like legal entanglements. That's weird to me. That's like, that tells me that they have a plan to move forward without a typical Jason. I mean, do we want just a zombie Jason in a different costume without the hockey mask and stuff? I don't know, because that's not. Could it add something new to the character? Yes. But I don't know. That's a fine line. That's a very, very fine. Let me know what you guys think, because that's a very fine line. I don't want to say no to a Jason that's a different design, but I also don't want to completely say yes, because it's like the Jason as we know him, hockey mask Jason, has become so iconic at this point. It's gonna be hard to. I feel like if they did something where, okay, you follow the same kind of pattern, you do a sequel to Friday the 13th, you can't use the hockey mask, you can't use all of those things. So be it. I think it would be weird to suddenly have, because you can't leave Jason out. You can't. He jumped out of the water and grabbed Alice at the end of the original film. You can't leave Jason out of it, because Jason is he was there. He's still there. You know what I mean? He's still there. You can't just leave him out. You would almost have to redesign him. If you don't have the rights to what Victor Miller owns, you would have to redesign the character. And I don't know what that would look like. Are you going to make him like a mummy? Is he going to be Baghead Jason again? I don't know who owns Baghead Jason. Nobody knows. I don't know. I feel like I sound like Jerry Seinfeld. Well, we don't know. That was the worst Seinfeld impression ever. I admit it. I know. I'll take a drink for that. I get it. I love Jerry Seinfeld, by the way. Not making fun of the dude at all. Love him. Jada said could be an all-new killer, like a twist that it would be a counselor killing. But I don't necessarily like that either, because why? I mean, it would depend on how it's done. The idea that a counselor is doing the killing now is kind of like, but what Pamela's entire MO, her entire motive was the fact that when Jason died, she had this psychotic break. That's why you're getting it's very similar to what happens in Psycho with Norman Bates, and kind of like the dual personality. It's like the personality of his dead mother is coming out through Norman Bates. Oh boy, it's the same thing with it's the same exact concept with Pamela Voorhees. The whole killer, mommy, killer, like that whole thing is that's Jason's personality coming out through her because of a psychotic break. Now, is it really Jason? No, it's not really Jason speaking through his mother, but it's her imagining in her weird, sick, twisted mind that Jason is egging her on. That's, I mean, that even they've explained that in the whole like like it's explained all of that. So I don't know how I would feel about it being a counselor, because the idea that Jason died is her entire that's Pamela's entire purpose in doing what she's doing, is to get revenge for Jason dying. So that's, I don't know, that's interesting. Jade had also said counselor is kin to one of the victims from One. Jason jumping out of the water was a mirage or hallucination. That could be interesting too. It could, listen, I'm not saying it couldn't work. It could 100% it could work. But I don't know. That's interesting. That I'll have to think about that one. We'll have to think about that. That's a bold strategy, Cotton. We'll have to see how that plays out. I don't know. That could be very interesting. I was already interested to see how the Crystal Lake series was going to turn out, just because that's a big ask. You know what I mean? That like a big story to tell, and it's going to be hard to, if they don't nail it in season 1, it's going to be hard to continue that. I know they said they have like 4 something seasons planned out of that show to cover both Pamela and Jason's story. But again, if you don't nail that first season, nobody's gonna want to come back for that. And I know there's they even said at that screening that Peacock would have to pay a pretty big penalty if they didn't sign Crystal Lake for a season 2. But I don't see them I think they would almost rather pay the penalty if it's not something that people are into, you know? So I think there's a lot riding on this first season. I think they're really, really, really going to have to nail it in order for Crystal Lake to stick around. Just because I know people are, I mean, it even said it, like, it literally said, I don't know. It literally said that I'm losing my train of thought. I just got a text and I looked down and I completely just lost my train of thought. This is what happens when you get old, folks. Don't get old. I'm only in my late 20s and I feel like I'm getting old. I completely lost my train of thought just now. What the hell was I about to say? I don't know. I'm going to drink to that. I have no idea. I probably sound like a babbling mess, but it's okay. These things happen sometimes. I don't know. I think I was going to say that they literally said that Pamela and Jason were both going to get their own thing. I don't know. That's weird. As far as Jason jumping out of the water as a hallucination, I guess it could have been. It could have been. I wonder what Sean's original intention was. I wonder what his original intention was. I'm not entirely sure with that. I don't know if I'll have to I'll tell you what, I need to rewatch Crystal Lake Memories because it's been a hot minute since I actually sat down and watched that. I've watched Never Sleep Again in little segments since we've been revisiting A Nightmare on Elm Street and Purely and Simply Evil. By the way, shout out to our horror show, Purely and Simply Evil, where we take D-Dubs into horror classics. I have some really cool ideas coming up that hopefully I'm going to be able to share with you really, really soon. Yeah, I don't know what his original intention was. Like, was it actually Jason coming out of the water? Was it really just a hallucination? Because if that was a hallucination, the entire franchise is basically built on something that wasn't meant to be. You know what I mean? Like that. I don't know. That could be interesting. That's going to be very interesting to see how all of that plays out. But specifically, what I wanted to do in this episode was talk about Crystal Lake itself. Not about the body of water, but about the series. I'm curious to hear your all thoughts right now. Let me know whether you're watching right now on the show, whether you're watching after the fact, or whether you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or any of the other platforms. You can tweet at us at LTM Podcast KY. Let me know right now, what do you want out of the Friday the 13th series? Out of Crystal Lake, what is the number one thing that you want to see come out of this series? Do you want it to be more Jason heavy? Do you want it to be more Pamela heavy? Do you want a good mixture of both? For me, I think the biggest thing, I know a lot of people are like, Jason is the face of the franchise and so be it, blah, 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 blah. But I think for me, I do want a good balance of Pamela and Jason. I think in a TV series format, I said this in my video earlier in the week. While people are interested in the Pamela story and in her losing her mind and things like that, like that could be a really cool film. But I don't know that audiences would flock to theaters to go and see that. I don't know that that would be quite as popular as a straight up Jason-centric film. Now, with that said, the Crystal Lake TV series is different because you can take the time in an episodic way to really showcase Pamela going berserk. I mean, you can start off the series where she is a sweet, kind, tender woman who loves kids and loves working at this camp, and when Jason dies, her world shatters, and you slowly watch her decline, her mental state decline, and you slowly watch her losing her mind and things kind of going nuts, and that could be really, really cool. I think there's something to be said about showcasing Pamela's complete breakdown in a way that we've never gotten to do that before. Because, again, the twist was so cool at the end of the original film because it was like, oh, like we got the little tidbits about Jason throughout the film, but when we finally realize at the end, when you get the whole, Jason was my son, and today is his birthday. When you get that whole thing and the big reveal at the end, it's like, oh, shit. But I think there's a really cool opportunity to showcase her mental decline in this series in a cool, unique way. Now, at the same time, I do love me some Jason Voorhees. I love me some. Where's my hockey mat? I painted this hawk right here, by the way. I can't point on this thing. I painted that hawk. I've actually painted quite a few hawks, and I have them in a bag. I had them up top. If you remember seeing them in the old movie room, I had them up top. I think there's a place for hockey mask Jason too. Now, if you want to start off with the bag head Jason thing, that's cool. Even if you want to start off with him as a kid, that would be kind of cool. I'm okay with the TV series expanding on things a little bit and showing us things that we haven't gotten to see before. That's why I'm okay with the Pamela thing. I'm okay with taking some time to showcase Pamela's story in a new light. I'm okay with taking some time to not jump straight into, okay, all these teenagers are going to party at Crystal Lake and Jason's about to cut bodies in half. You know what I mean? I'm okay, like take your time to develop things, develop the world, develop the lore. You can do it's the same thing that I would say about a Nightmare on Elm Street series. If they're gonna go the TV show route with a Nightmare on Elm Street, take the entire first season and make it a murder mystery whodunit drama series with some of the cast members that you would use, like for Lieutenant Thompson and for Nancy's drunk vodka drinking mom, and you know what I mean, for some of these other people, for all of the parents. Make it a really, really creepy, dark, Seven-esque crime drama about Freddy Krueger and about all of this stuff. And at the end of that series, you can burn him, and then maybe in the last 10 minutes of the episode, you get the first dream sequence. And then season 2, you can go balls to the wall and tell your Nightmare on Elm Street stories. I think you can do the same thing with Friday the 13th. I think you can take this first season and do Pamela's story, show her downfall, show, not long before her rampage at Crystal Lake. I mean, that can be the last 2 episodes, is Pamela showing up and killing people when they're trying to reopen Crystal Lake. You know what I mean? I think that could work. Showing people close to Pamela lose their mind. What if she's what if she's got a psychiatrist? What if she kills the psychiatrist? What if she kills her doctor? What if she kills her neighbor? I mean, you could do some crazy things with Pamela. You could make that a really, really interesting series. And I think there's a lot to happen there. And then take the next season and focus on Hockey Mask Jason. Focus on, you could even show Jason as a kid, as zombie Jason, as a young kid trying to adapt to this environment, and adapt to essentially being a zombie. I mean, you all know, take that with a grain of salt. I don't want to see Jason like trying to figure out how to live. That's not what I mean. Could you imagine like Jason sitting in an outhouse, like walking out of an outhouse with toilet paper stuck to his foot or something like that? Or like trying to make like a grilled cheese. Oh my God. I don't know. There's stuff there. There's material there. There's ideas there. There's a lot that they could do with Crystal Lake. So I don't know. Bring in Corey Cunningham, yo. It's Friday the 13th, and we're gonna have a great time tonight. J-Dad said Crystal Lake should be like Bates Motel. I agree. Take us deep inside the Voorhees family. Deep as deep can go. Let's see Jason as a boy doing creepy shit and his mom slip into lunacy. I would be down for that too. Seeing well, I don't know. It almost makes it better though for me, as it's the same thing as like Michael Myers was just a completely normal kid and then he snapped, which I know in the new trilogy they kind of like the cop was always like, he was weird. He was like the kid that like picked the wings off of butterflies and did like really terrible things. But I think it almost makes it more effective for Jason when he's just a normal kid and this terrible thing happens to him and then he's a psychopath after that. You know what I mean? Like out for revenge. I think that's kind of cool too. But I completely agree with you about Pamela's slip into lunacy thing. That could be great. J-Dad also said, you can make the whole series without ever saying the name Jason. Ms. Voorhees always called him... Oh, man, here's that beer. Ms. Voorhees always called him her special boy, and the campgoers and counselors could just call him that weird Voorhees kid. Now, what you could do is you could make it that Jason is being bullied because he's got some... Either you could make it physical deformities, you could make it mental things. You could, I don't know if he had Down syndrome. I mean, something that kids would be terrible to him about. You know what I mean? Not to make light out of any of those things at all. But you could do something like that so that yes, Jason is a normal kid to us viewers, but to the kids that he will be at Crystal Lake with, they could be making fun of him and things like that. Similarly to what happened in Freddy vs. Jason in that film. If you remember the scene when we got the weird demon Freddy where he was like bright, like crimson red colored. But, you know, you could do something like that where they were bullying him for the way he looked or something like that. I mean, there's ways that you could do that. I think there's ways that you could make Jason the good kid without making him weird. I don't think Jason needs to be weird. If we're going to show Jason as a little boy, I don't think he needs to be like the weird kid who, again, like the cop said in Halloween Kills, like who picks the wings off of butterflies and things like that, and who like abuses animals or like is weird to people. Like, I don't think you need to do that. I think it would make it almost more effective if Jason was a good, sweet kid that was picked on and that, you know, got all the wrong cards and that ended up unfortunately dying and drowning in Crystal Lake because people were being terrible to him. I think there's something to be said there. So I think there are multiple different avenues to take with Crystal Lake. I mean, I think there is potential there for a really, really unique telling of this story that we haven't gotten to see before. And I am a little bit skeptical because, again, we haven't gotten anything in years. I do think A24, it really intrigues me, the fact that they're doing it, because I like a lot of their stuff a lot. But, you know, I think it all depends on how balanced it is between the two, which is going to be hard to tell, at least when the series premieres, because if it is a balance between Jason and Pamela, it probably won't be in the first season unless they do something very episodic where it's like it's not necessarily a cohesive story from episode to episode. It's just like this episode. It's like a Freddy's Nightmares type deal where it's like, okay, this episode's about Pamela. This episode's about Jason. This next episode's about Jason, but the next episode's about Pamela. Like if you did something like that, that doesn't necessarily appeal to me as much as just straight up doing a sequential story where like things just kind of build and build and build and build. So I think the potential is there for something really, really cool and for something different. I keep saying that word different because I don't think this is going to be a carbon copy of what we've seen before. I mean, this franchise, you know, more so than Halloween, and more so than some of the other franchises, Elm Street and Friday went off the friggin' rails there at the end. I mean, they did a lot of crazy things, you know. So, I mean, look at Freddy's Dead. Look at Jason Takes Manhattan. Jason Lives the whole, or not the whole, not Jason Lives. The New Blood with the telepathic girl and things like that. Like just all the weird, you know, her dad rising up and tackling Jason out of the lake. Like they did some strange things. So I think I'm gonna go into this with an open mind. I'm sure that we will hear much, much more information about Crystal Lake. I mean, shoot, we just got this brand new thing 4 hours ago that Colton let me know about in the chat. This new information about Jason. So I think we'll definitely get more about it in the coming months. And I'm not looking forward for a 2023 release. I think this will definitely be a 2024 release. I would be shocked if it is a 2023 release. It'll be around Halloween time at the end of the year, but I don't think it'll be ready by then. Personally, I don't. So I will say something that really, really excites me about Crystal Lake is that Adrienne King, who played Alice in Friday the 13th Part 1 and Part 2, is returning for a recurring role in the series. Now, I mentioned this in the other episode, or not other episodes, in the Crystal Lake update video from earlier in the week. I personally think it would be really, really cool if Adrienne King was the one to play Pamela, because I believe you'd have to go back and rewatch that video. I believe, trying to think, Patsy Palmer. Oh my God, I can't talk. Good Lord. Betsy Palmer. I believe Betsy Palmer was in her mid-50s, 54, 55 maybe, when she played Pamela in the original Friday the 13th in 1980. And Adrienne King, I believe, is 62, 61 or 62 today. So the age difference, it's only a 6 or 7 year age difference, really. I mean, it's not necessarily a massive age difference. So I think it would be cool. It would be a cool nod to the original and to both characters and to Adrienne herself if she got to do Pamela's whole speech talking to Alice or talking to a new counselor. You know what I mean? Giving the whole, he was my son. His name was Jason. And today is his birthday. Like the whole Pamela reveal speech. I think it would be kind of a cool nod if Adrienne King herself played Pamela. That would be kind of a cool thing to do, especially if she could really pull off that emotional snap moment really, really well. That could be cool, man. That could be awesome. Yeah, Betsy Palmer. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm losing my mind. I need to go to bed. Jaded said, a cool little twist could be that we find out there's something special about Crystal Lake, like it's an old burial ground or was once an area used for ancient rituals. Do we need that, though? Do we need that? That's the same kind of, that equivalent is the same thing to me as saying that the radio tower signal is a silver shamrock thing, and it's like, no. Like, I'm not about that. I'm good. I don't need any ancient burial grounds. I don't need any of that stuff. That almost seems like a cop-out for me. I don't know. Again, this is my opinion. Anybody else can feel free to completely disagree with me. And I'm sure there are people that disagree with me. But me personally, I would rather it stick to a grounded story about this person losing her mind and her poor son dying, and I don't know. I would rather it stick to something like that, a more grounded story between these two characters. I don't think it needs to focus on all brand new characters. I think that's going to get boring really quickly. I think right out of the gate, they need to focus on Pamela. Pamela needs to be the focus at the beginning of Crystal Lake, and then you can go back and you can start to expand on that and expand on the Jason thing. And then, of course, after the thing happens with Pamela, once she kills everybody in Crystal Lake, then you can expand on Jason and you can do Hockey Mask Jason. You can start to do a Freddy's Nightmares type thing where you're telling different stories in that world and things like that. So I think there is, I think there's a lot to do. I think there are, I think there are a lot of positives. I know they begin writing very, very soon. Another one is that Brian Fuller, again, there was that whole Friday the 13th Part 3D screening at the Chinese Theater in LA. And Brian Fuller, who I believe is the showrunner, don't quote me on that, but I believe Brian Fuller is the showrunner of the Crystal Lake series. And he had said that they're starting writing. That's why I don't think it'll be ready in 2023. If they're just now starting writing in a couple of weeks, it's not going to be ready. But there were a couple other things too. Kevin Williamson, again, Scream franchise. I Know What You Did Last Summer, Halloween H2O, really, really 90s vibe, and I say that in the best possible way. I don't. That's not a knock at him at all. Could bring something really cool to the table. He's writing at least an episode. I'm sure he'll write a couple. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they're getting different writers for every single episode. I don't know how that's all going to work. I don't know if they're going to have like a writing team of people to kind of keep the same vibe and the same story. But Kevin Williamson doing it is pretty cool. I think that would be a really, really cool thing to do, especially if you're going to do the Pamela thing and you show kind of her deep dive into insanity and you get to do things like that. That could be cool. I think he's a really, really good choice for writing, especially if he's going to write for the Pamela stuff. That could be kind of cool. And also that they're looking at two different scores, two different ways of scoring the thing. I keep bumping. I'm not used to this setup yet with the mic being like right here next to my face, and I keep bumping the cord on the back of it. I don't mean to, but I keep doing that. I'm not used to it. I need to get used to this now. It's changing the way I do things. But But they're going back and forth between using two different scores. A modern one, which I would assume is a more dramatic, thematic, cinematic. That's a lot of matics. A very cinematic, dark, captivating score, and more of the flashy booby dooby dooby like the all the flashy stuff that we got in the original Friday the 13th that was very reminiscent of what Bernard Herrmann did with Psycho. It wasn't until this last rewatch of Friday the 13th that I was really like, man, there are a lot of Psycho, not necessarily references, but like inspirations in this film. Like it's very obvious that some of it was heavily inspired by Psycho. Like the music, the vibe, the way things kind of go. And I know it's a different vibe than Psycho. I know that, but the music especially, I was like, dang, this really sounds like Psycho. It does. It has that same sound as like the crunchy notes together, and the dissonance, and the way that it's just kind of flashy and all over the place, and it's supposed to invoke that like that like gasping, eerie emotion. It's cool. So I would like a balance between the two. I mean, what would be cool is if one was more like Jason's was more cinematic and Pamela's was more Manfredini-esque. I think that'd be kind of cool. I don't know. The thing about Crystal Lake, as we start to wrap up here, the thing about Crystal Lake is that the possibilities are endless, and I think many people are cautiously optimistic about it. I know I am. I'm a little less cautiously optimistic about Sean Cunningham developing a reboot. That kind of has me scratching my head a little bit here. I'm like, how's that gonna work? How's that gonna go? What are we gonna do with that? It's like when you're at a buffet and you look at something and you're like, I have no idea what that is, and I want to try it, but I also don't want it to be gross. It's like that same kind of thing. Even though I could not tell you the last time I went to a buffet. It was before COVID. It was probably a year or so before COVID. It's been a hot minute since I've been to a buffet. Anyways, what happened? How did we get off on that? The possibilities are endless, and I think there are really, really good things that they could do with this series. I also think that there are some things that could make it a little bit of a miss, and I don't want this to be a miss. I want them to stick the landing on this, because as that Bloody Disgusting article said that we read a little bit ago, we haven't had a Friday the 13th project. We haven't seen Jason or Pamela on the big screen in 14 years. That's a big deal. There's a lot riding on this series and on this potential film now, because they really need to stick the landing for this stuff, or else it's going to be like, it's either going to revitalize the franchise in a really, really cool way, or it's just going to miss the mark, and it's just kind of going to fall into the same cavern that it was in before, so. And there's been a lot of build-up with the legal battle and things like that, with people trying to figure out, like, what exactly is Friday the 13th going to look like after this legal battle is over? I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, but that's a good thing. That tells us that there are options. So again, if you are watching after the fact, please, 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 please let me know your thoughts on Crystal Lake and on The Last of Us. Because The Last of Us had a really, really incredible premiere. There's been a lot of talk about Crystal Lake lately. There's been a lot of talk about Crystal Lake lately, and a lot of talk about the Friday the 13th franchise and the direction. But guys, this has been a fun stream. About an hour and a half in. If you haven't already, please be sure to leave this episode a like. As J-Ded would say, stab that like button. I have a few different things coming down the pipeline. I'm hoping for next week, fingers crossed, that we can get some of this to work out next week. I'll let you guys know kind of hopefully by the end of the weekend what next week is going to look like. I'm going to try to I've got one review I want to get out next week, hopefully, if I can get to watch the film. Couple of things going on. Miguel is doing fine, by the way. I know I didn't talk about him very much tonight. He's doing good. Hopefully we're going to get him back in 2 or 3 weeks. But he's I just want you guys to know he's doing all right. So, and I know, he misses you all. He misses being here. He misses doing the show. But it's been fun. It's been different. It's been a different kind of thing, getting to make these pre-produced videos, and I'm trying to get at least one of those out a week. And just kind of keep on doing what we're doing. So, guys, I love you. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. This has been episode number 103 of Let's Talk Movies. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LTM Podcast KY. New episodes of Let's Talk Movies and Purely and Simply Evil premiere every single week at 8 p.m. Eastern. If you're going to tweet at us, please use the hashtag Let's Talk Movies Podcast. Guys, love you so much. Thank you for always being here. Thank you for always showing up. And definitely check out the channel if you're new. And I will talk to you the next time that I see you. Hopefully that's going to be on Tuesday night. And have a great weekend, guys. Talk to you. Peace.